All right, good morning. My name is Jeff Orrock here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield. I'm going to hit the weather this week, basically covering from today, the 31st, all the way through November 6th. Hit some of the highlights and a little bit of what we expect here over the next several days. I'm not going to read it verbatim here, but you can see the highlights and the bullets that we sent out in the briefing. The bottom line is a drought is continuing and the dry spell is also going to continue. A little bit breezy today, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Not a real significant fire danger, even though it's going to be breezy. The humidity's up, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And next week looks like kind of a load and repeat of this week for next week, so we'll take a look at that. There are some small craft advisory conditions out there on the bay and the coastal waters from the southwest wind, and then we're going to have a front come through Friday night, Friday evening. That are going to bump the winds up as well, so we'll touch on that. Right now, there are no real headlines across the area, just these small craft advisories in effect for the Chesapeake Bay. Probably going to be adding the James River into that as the southwest winds increase for later today, tomorrow, and then that north wind Friday night. And wouldn't be surprised to see all the coastal waters all the way down into North Carolina adding those to the small craft advisory as well. As far as what it looks like outside right now, looking at the visible satellite, you can actually see the high pressure in place. You can actually see how the clouds here are kind of rotating kind of clockwise here. And we're kind of on the back side of the high. So that means our winds are kind of coming out of the west and the southwest as the high pressure is really offshore. And we're pulling up some of that warmer, humid air from the deep south here up into central and eastern Virginia. But very clear over us. Not really much cloud cover at all. If you go down into the tropics, we'll talk about this. You do see a little bit of an area of showers and storms out here in the far western Caribbean. Not this over here to the east, but over here to kind of the southwest, the lower left-hand image here. You do see a cluster of showers and thunderstorms there, and the Hurricane Center is watching that area there. So when we get to that slide, kind of point out here where we do have some showers and storms out there in the southwestern Caribbean. So looking at it, kind of stepping through the fronts here, I'll actually pull over the web page here. It makes it a little easier to step through. You see this afternoon, again, that high pressure that you saw on the satellite, that circulation, it's sitting just offshore, giving us that, warm and relatively humid southwest wind here today. Could get a little bit breezy this afternoon as things mix a little bit, kind of like it did yesterday. And that's going to be true again for tomorrow. You do see this cold front kind of coming across the Ohio River Valley with some showers along it that's going to be headed our way. Come tomorrow morning, you see that front is starting to push through West Virginia. You do notice maybe the area in green starting to shrink a little bit. So the precipitation with the front may actually start to dissipate the further east it goes. And by the time we get into basically Friday evening, about, let's say 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock or so, the front's going to be pushing across the Commonwealth and getting into Maryland Eastern Shore, but you don't see a whole lot of green with it anymore. So this front is moving into a pretty dry air mass. There's just not a lot of moisture out there. That's why there's no cloud cover. So there's not a lot for the front to work with. So probably going to be breezy ahead of the front. It'll be breezy behind the front, but we're not expecting any precipitation really. So this rolls through Friday evening. By the time you get to Saturday morning, you see the fronts push down towards Myrtle Beach, and the high pressure is building in from the north, bringing us some cooler temperatures, which will show. By Sunday morning, the high pressure really is kind of settling in along the mid-Atlantic, kind of anchored up here into New York. So that's going to give us, cooler temperatures than what we've seen the last couple of days. And then as you get into Monday of next week, again, kind of a load and repeat. High pressure moves offshore. By Tuesday, the high pressure is offshore, almost like we have right now. And you see another front coming across parts of the Midwest, which should get here by about Thursday. That front should jump to us about Thursday. And again, if you compare, Tuesday with a lot of showers along the front to when the front gets here by Thursday, yeah, you don't see nearly as much green. So again, not expecting much precipitation, even with this front expected a week from today. So we'll kind of stay tuned to that, but it looks like it's going to stay dry for a while. So again, no rain expected the next 72 hours. And to be honest with you, there's no significant rainfall expected even through next week. I mean, there could be a few little sprinkles here or there. Somebody might pick up, a hundredth or a couple hundredths of an inch, but things are so dry, they really don't expect that rainfall to amount to a whole lot of anything. So just continue dry here, not only in the short term, but also it looks like in the long term. So for today, things could get just a little bit breezy. Nothing, out of hand, nothing too bad. You may just notice some wind gusts, about maybe 20 to 25 miles per hour. Worst case in the models maybe shows some gusts close to 30 for this afternoon with mixing. And that might be true again for tomorrow afternoon, where we might be able to get some gusts into the mid 20s. Maybe you get a gust, somewhere to 30 miles per hour, give or take. Maybe that's your peak gust that you see for the entire day. So maybe notice that breeze may pick up in the afternoons. When that front comes through, we may actually also notice the north winds kind of getting a little bit breezy Friday night, but then the winds do start to decrease on Saturday. So the wind's not going to last too long through the weekend. Things are going to calm down pretty quickly. So other than just some breezy and dry conditions and warm, really not a whole lot to be too concerned about. Now, things are very dry. The the leaf litter, things like that are starting to hit the ground, very dry. So, there's always that concern for fire danger, for wildfires to start. The good news is right now, even though it's breezy, it is kind of humid. And so the minimum humidities right now in the afternoon are right around maybe 40 to 40% or so, give or take, maybe 45% today and tomorrow. So with the humidity being up a little bit, it doesn't, even though it's going to be breezy, the wildfire danger is not really excessively high. So something to be aware of when it is breezy like this. Things are dry, but the humidity is not super bad. What we're going to have to maybe watch out for is on Saturday, the winds may stay up a little bit longer on the eastern shore. So the winds will decrease across most of central Virginia as you get through, I'd say, mid to late morning on Saturday. But those north winds may continue across the eastern shore into Saturday afternoon. And that's pretty dry air coming down behind that front on Saturday. So we may have a little bit of an increased fire danger for the eastern shore on Saturday with those dry north winds lasting a little bit longer into the afternoon, and the humidity may be dropping down to, let's say, 30% or so. It would be a bit drier. So we'll have to watch out for that. If we do have an increased fire danger for the eastern shore, we'll issue something tomorrow afternoon for Saturday. So that's kind of maybe the greatest fire danger threat might be on the eastern shore for Saturday if those winds last through most of the day. Looking at our temperatures, really warm today and tomorrow. For the Halloween, temperatures right around basically low 80s, maybe a few upper to 70s or so, mid 70s along the Outer Banks. But tomorrow, just about the same. Right ahead of the front, we're going to get pretty much a full day of heating before that cold front gets here. But then the front comes through Friday night, and you can definitely see Saturday and Sunday a bit cooler. And so with that coolness, you expect some breezy conditions there Friday night and Saturday morning, and then the winds decrease Saturday afternoon. But have some cooler temperatures here for Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But then you kind of notice a repeat as you get into Tuesday and Wednesday, and this is Thursday right here, right ahead of that front. Again, temperatures going right back up into the upper 70s to lower 80s. So expecting more warm, dry conditions, next week as well. Looking at your overnight lows, again, nothing too cold. You do start to see some upper 30s here behind that front over the weekend, especially in inland areas. You see some 40s and some upper 30s. But then by the time you get into Tuesday, Wednesday, lows, again, upper 50s, low 60s ahead of that front later next week. So again, kind of just a repeat of what we're seeing right now. Looking at the chance of rain, we really have, kind of dialed out the chance of rain in the forecast. Could there be a few little sprinkles with that front Saturday? Maybe. Odds are if it happens, nobody will even notice it. So just really no very limited chance of rain with that front coming through Friday night. And then we'll see what happens with that front. It doesn't go out far enough to get to that front on Thursday, but we'll see what happens with that front on Thursday. But again, looks extremely limited as far as any chance of rainfall. So because of that, the drought has been expanding. This is the latest drought monitor. And now really the entire area now is in D0, which is basically abnormally dry. I'm really starting to recognize, over the last, I'd say 2 weeks or so, we're starting to see a lot of dryness across the area. You have some D1 moderate drought now covering all the peninsulas, including Hampton Roads and all of Northeast North Carolina into this D1 moderate drought, and even starting to see now D2. creeping into parts of the Maryland Eastern Shore, and it has been extremely dry. I think on the next slide, you can see how extremely dry the Maryland Eastern Shore has been. So this is the percent of normal rainfall over the last 30 days. And if you look, the Eastern Shore, including the Northern Neck, this deep, dark red, I mean, you're talking less than 10% of the normal rainfall over the last 30 days. And so these areas really didn't see any beneficial rainfall from Helene. They kind of got missed out. And so really a lot of the areas along the bay, these eastern areas have been really, really dry, even bleeding a little bit down into Hampton Roads and Northeast North Carolina. You see a lot of dryness here where we've been maybe, 25% or less of rainfall that we would normally see over the last month. And even starting to see some pockets of dryness now. And this is even, after Helene here over a lot of parts of the Commonwealth here as you get west of Richmond and you get into southwestern Virginia, starting to see a little more dryness. So drought is definitely starting to expand, and you can really see how severe the Eastern Shore has been as far as lack of rainfall is concerned. Shifting gears into the marine side, we are expecting, some small craft conditions here, mainly along the bay and maybe right along the coast here, basically with the southwest winds, maybe getting a little gusty in the afternoons. And when that front comes through Friday night, expect a pretty decent little surge of north wind coming down the bay, getting into the lower James and even the coastal waters, with that north wind as that cold air rushes down Friday night. But no probability of gales. Looks like we're just mainly going to be maintaining small craft conditions. And here you kind of see the area in here in orange where we're expecting those wind gusts of maybe 20 knots or so on the bay with the southwest wind, next couple of days, and then especially that north wind coming down with the cold front, probably going to see some winds on the bay of 20. Wouldn't be shocked to see some gusts to 25 knots. And same thing here on the coastal waters. You get into Saturday and Saturday night, you do see how the winds do start to decrease for Saturday. So this is mainly Saturday morning. Might still see a little bit of breezy conditions here with that north wind, maybe about 15 to 20 knots, maybe even some gusts to 25 knots here in the lower bay at the mouth of the bay Saturday morning. But then you really start to see those conditions improve for Sunday. So Sunday is not nearly as bad, and neither is Monday. Looks like Monday is going to be pretty calm. So the breeziest conditions are really going to be some gustiness this afternoon with mixing in the southwest wind. Probably going to do it again tomorrow afternoon, and then tomorrow evening we'll get that front to surge down, and the winds maybe linger a little bit here Saturday morning before they start to decrease. And so with that, these are the peak winds that we're expecting. So the highest winds we'll experience be around maybe 20 to 25 knots on the bay, and maybe upwards about maybe 25 to almost maybe close to 30 knots here on the coastal waters. So the strongest winds will probably be with the front when it comes through Friday evening by, I'd say, anywhere between 9 p.m. and let's say 11 p.m. depending on where you are on the coastal waters Friday night. But it's still going to be a little bit gusty here with the southwest wind for this afternoon and Friday afternoon. And then Friday night, you're going to get that northerly surge. And that's probably when you're going to see some of these absolute peak winds is with that north wind, with that cold front coming through Friday night. Looking at the waves, the bay is generally right now running about 1 to 2 feet. When that front comes through, it's probably going to jump up to about 3 to 4 feet with that north wind coming right down the bay. So probably going to get pretty bumpy. And the same thing for the coastal waters, going to be running about maybe 4 to 5 feet in the coastal waters with that front. So kind of looking at it day by day, kind of breaking it down. Again, you see that southwest wind today, maybe getting some gusts up around 20 knots or so. And then through Friday ahead of that front, kind of continuing that southwest wind. It's going to be sustained about, I'd say, 15 to 20 knots with maybe some gusts getting up to about 25 knots or so that you're seeing here. And you see that wind shift right here between 6 p.m. and basically about midnight Friday. So I give it anywhere between 9 and 11 p.m. That's when that front's coming through and those winds come out of the north. And you see those winds, kind of that northerly wind, about, I'd say, good 20 knots, gusting up to maybe 25 knots with that surge basically Friday night. But by the time you get to Saturday afternoon between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m., notice how you still have the northeast winds, north winds, but they are decreasing, coming down to about maybe 15 knots, maybe a few gusts to 20 knots in the afternoon. But then by the time you get into Saturday evening, those winds have decreased quite a bit. And the Sunday and Monday, you don't see nearly as much wind. And then you kind of load and repeat. By the time we get into Wednesday of next week, the southwest winds start to increase again, get a little bit gusty ahead of that next front, which will come through later on Thursday. So again, we got kind of a summary of the wave height in our briefing. Generally 4 to 5 feet in the coastal waters, and I'd say on the bay you're getting about 2 feet today, maybe temporarily 3 to 4 with that front that comes through Friday night. So this was the area that we were talking about earlier with that little area disturbed weather down here in the Caribbean. So the Hurricane Center does have this identified as a 40 to 60% probability of potential development. So we'll keep an eye on this. They are expecting this to become better organized. And so we'll see what happens with any intensification and if it becomes a tropical depression or eventually gets named. As far as where it might go, it looks like it may drift kind of northward or maybe a little bit northwestward into the Gulf of Mexico. And with that high pressure that keeps building down across us, we keep getting fronts coming down through the mid-Atlantic region. It's going to be really difficult to get anything to kind of come up, very far north. So odds are, if this thing does develop, it's probably going to get pushed somewhere into the Gulf of Mexico, or eventually maybe get pushed, further to the east. It's going to be, we kind of have this blocking pattern over us, this fall time pattern that looks like it's going to make it difficult for it to come north. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens, but may see something, some development down here a little bit later on in the future. But right now, not a real concern for us here in this neck of the woods. And looking ahead, you can kind of get a glimpse from what we talked about, with the forecast next week. Looking out 6 to 10 days, very strong signal for continued on average above normal temperatures. Yeah, we get a front that comes through, about every week. It drops temperatures down maybe for a couple of days, but the temperatures are jumping right back up to well above normal. Once those fronts pass through, you only get a couple days of cooler weather. So looks like we get a strong signal for above normal temperatures. For precipitation, I'd say, near normal may be a stretch. Right now we're thinking it's probably going to be more like below normal. You do see here on the eastern shore, they're showing probabilities of below normal precipitation, and normal for most of the area here in gray. If I was a betting person, I probably would not expect a return to near normal precipitation, probably in the next, 10 days, maybe even not within the next 2 weeks. So we'll see. Kind of stay tuned there. And that will conclude the briefing for this week.